I got into a strategy and corporate development role. I went from kind of sales and marketing into strategy and corporate development. And I spent 2 years doing a couple different deals, doing everything from sourcing opportunities to diligence to closing deals. We sold the business to a private equity firm. I was working with bankers and lawyers, and it kind of took me back to my campaign days, right? Because when you're doing a deal, as you guys know, it's the same thing, right? It's this frenetic pace of
100%.
activity from, the time that you sign that, that LOI to the sign that you get it actually closed. The diligence is a really in-depth process, but it's got to be exacting.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Right?
Hey, this is William Tidcup and Ryan Leary. You are listening and watching Inside the C-Suite. We've got Dan on from Accurate, and we're going to learn all about his journey to the C-Suite. So we've known Dan for a while, done some work with him, and but we don't know anything about his journey. So we're along for the ride as well. So Dan, would you do us a favor and introduce yourself and kind of what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, super excited to be here, William, Ryan. Thank you guys for having me.
Sure.
I am currently the Chief Revenue Officer at Accurate, and we're a global provider of employment screening services. And I have the pleasure of working with our full go-to-market team. So everything from marketing to sales, onboarding, implementation, customer service, account management, a couple hundred employees worldwide.
So Chief Revenue Officer, that's newish, I guess, because it's a C-suite position, and the way that y'all have it structured, I would assume you've got marketing, go-to-market, you've got everything under you.
Yeah, it's our CEO Tim Dowd was very sort of exacting in the way he wanted to structure the team. So he wanted to have our COO has everything on the back office side, so operations, technology, development. And then I've got everything on the front office. So essentially, I get the chance to work with the team and kind of manage the whole customer journey, right? From how we go out to market and reach clients and prospects, how we communicate with them, how we sell to them, how we support them. So it's been interesting. I mean,
so your team, you have customers as well?
Yeah. So I have our account management team as well as our customer service team. So all of the interactions with our clients and with their candidates are.
That helps. I think that helps. That's closed loop, because customers are also people that you upsell. So there's a sales component as well as a support and kind of all the other things that they need. So I like that. Every model is a little bit different. You go into some organization, they've got sales, they've got marketing.
Yeah.
And then, there's a whole lot of blame going both directions. And so I kind of like the buck stops with you in this model. If it deals with revenue, it lands on your desk.
Completely. And one thing I really like is the relationship between marketing and sales. That's kind of like this historical cat and dog relationship, right, within the corporate world. And having both of those teams completely aligned has been fantastic. I mean, it just has, we've kind of lowered all of those silos that are, you historically see between sales and marketing. Said, guys, we're in this together to grow the business. So it's been great.
So, Dan, I love the story of today, but I love even more the story of how you got here, which is obviously the purpose of a C-suite, right? So let's travel back into time. Let's start digging in. We don't have to go to infant or toddler stage, but
you learn how to walk.
Those were critical years, though, Ryan.
100%.
They were critical years. What was your first word? Let's start there. Do you even remember your first word?
I don't.
No.
I'm sure my mother, who is 91, will tell me, though, if I communicate.
You got good genes. You'll be around.
100%.
You'll be around. So tell us about Little Dan. How did you get started in business? What's your story?
So my story really began, I would say, like everyone probably, within kind of late high school, college. So in high school, I was almost a dropout. I barely got out of high school.
I feel like I've heard this story.
We're similar stories. Very good. I tell people I graduated 25th in my class. There was 900 students, and people are like, "Man, that's awesome!" Like from the bottom.
From the bottom. Yes.
From the bottom.
Well, William, you and I were in a very similar position. So I had a lot of fun in high school. Had some really great friends. Spent a lot of time, as I kind of affectionately call, smoking and joking. We did a lot of smoking and joking.
100%.
And
mistakes were made. Yeah.
Mistakes were made, but a lot of lessons were learned too, right? So I think, and I kind of got a lot of that out of my system in high school. So I barely got into college, and I followed a good friend of mine to a real small school in Missouri. I grew up outside DC and Virginia. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So someone told me, like, hey, you should you study something you really love. And I love geography. You could probably see this map on the back.
I was about to say.
I am just passionate about geopolitical issues, economic issues, cultures. I'm just passionate about that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to study that. No clue what that would do for me after that. So I spent 2 years in Missouri, decided that's not where I wanted to be. I took some time off, went to community college, and then got into Virginia Tech, which is where I wanted to graduate from, which had a really good program, kind of moving up the ladder academically, which was good. And then I realized I really wanted to be in politics and policy. So my mother was a big influence on that. She'd always been involved in politics at a grassroots level, and she was a huge influence on me in that. And so I did some internships on the Hill. I did some internships with campaigns. And when I graduated from tech, I jumped into political campaigns in Virginia. And I was in retail politics for about 3 years in a variety of different roles. Campaign manager, political director, on congressional races, local state house.
So you got to see how the sausage is made.
Oh, yeah. So I got to, yes. And what I loved about being in retail politics is your job is different literally every day, right? One day you are talking to the press. You're talking to the Washington Post. You're talking like Peter Baker at the Washington Post.
Wow.
The next day you are handing out literature at a high school football game, right? Vote for Gary Jones. The next day you're at a high dollar fundraiser meeting, Newt Gingrich or, Governor so-and-so. And then the next day you're blowing up balloons at an event, so you literally have this compressed time, because the campaign it's typically 6 months long. And every day you have 100 things to do. You wear 100 different hats. And you
got a lot of volunteers to manage as well.
You have a lot of volunteers to manage.
So,
which is money.
Oh, yeah. Now, when you say retail politics, just for me, actually, and probably some of the audience as well, what does that mean?
So that's really campaigning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Got it.
So you also have to put your marketing sales hat on, right?
Oh, yeah.
That is a lot of that is about, selling the candidate and selling the vision and all of those things. So I loved that. About 3 years into it, I became, we lost a lot. So I was not very fortunate. The goal in campaign politics is you win, and then you leverage that into some great job, right?
100%.
100%. So-and-so did that great job. I was not fortunate enough to have a lot of those tracks.
Did you pick the wrong candidates?
A little bit less. What's that?
Did you pick the wrong candidates, or you were just bad at your job?
Yeah.
Honest question. That's an honest question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Could you just?
Is this a? It just sucked.
It could be a little bit of both. I think.
You picked the wrong horse, and
I picked some. Honestly, I worked for some amazing people. But what I saw was that this was kind of the rise in the early 90s, the rise of the political consultant. And the political consultant would come in and take the candidate and essentially reposition the candidate the way in which they think that they were going to win.
Right.
Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. So I started to sort of see, as you were saying, William, earlier, like how the sausage was made, and I became a little less idealistic. And
100%.
I saw people getting changed, sort of like, for instance, I worked for this guy in North Carolina. He was running for governor in a gubernatorial primary. He was the former mayor of Charlotte, the largest city in North Carolina. He played basketball under Dean Smith. So, I mean, talk about credentials. And when he was 19, he walked down to his local Army recruiting station and volunteered to go to Vietnam. Won the Bronze Star. I mean, he had this amazing story, just a wonderful person. And it was a great example of how, people came in and made him into something that he was not, and he lost. And I think that was kind of like my last, okay, I'm done with this. And that's when I kind of got more passionate about public policy. And I okay, I get the politics, I get the political side, but I really am more interested in how do we create good policy and how can I be involved in that? And so I worked as a lobbyist for a while for an aviation trade association in DC.
Yeah.
And then I spent 3 years working for the governor in Virginia as
which governor?
Jim Gilmore. So it was the mid 90s.
Yeah, it was before Warren. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was right after Governor Allen and before I can't remember. Anyway.
Back then, Virginia was pretty much Democrat, right?
It was it was kind of like more of an evolving red state, I would say. I hate to use that stuff, but it was becoming it was becoming more conservative. Like the blue dog Democrats were starting to lose. The national picture was changing.
Yep.
And it was an amazing experience. I mean, working in the governor's office, working for the secretary. At that time I was working for the Secretary of Transportation. We had 5 state agencies, $1 billion+ budget. I was constantly debriefing her and the governor and working with state legislators. I mean, it was just an amazing job.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so that was a great experience of just working at kind of that executive level. And,
it seems like there's sales in both of these things, right? So in the politics of obviously the retail politics, say you're selling, whether or not we want to call it that or not, but you're sales and marketing, you're actually positioning, you're doing all that stuff. And even in policy, there's an element of sales of getting people on the same page, right? Just like building consensus.
Mm-hmm.
So you're honing your sales skills way before sales even enters the pictures.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think you're right. You're positioning, you're selling ideas. You're out in the marketplace too, talking to constituents about, is this something that they like or they don't like, or, and so there's a lot of those elements. There was a lot of communication opportunities for me. I'd go out and speak on behalf of the governor and at events, and, I did the ribbon cutting ceremonies of this, this new bypass and, this new bridge. And, it was
cool.
It was amazing interacting with the press. When you're 24 and you get an opportunity to sit down with a chief executive of a state and debrief them, fly with them to DC or events, or, just the exposure was great, right? I mean, it was about really kind of instilling confidence in your ideas and instilling confidence in how you communicate. And I think those were things that were just pivotal for me for all of my next steps, when you kind of get the confidence of being in the room, that's such a huge, sort of a huge barrier to overcome.
How did you get that confidence? So you're almost a high school dropout. You barely get through college. Right. I mean, I'm talking about the good stuff here.
Wow.
Right?
I
think I had a 2.5. Let's be honest. I think it was a 2.5. So
that's good. That's probably where I was, right? Something
Same.
around there.
Yeah, same.
Look at us. But
I did take Spanish 1, I think, at least twice, but I
Oh,
think it still
100%.
wasn't too
there
far.
you go. There
Took
you
like
go.
6 years of Spanish. I said I don't know any of the words. Google
Well,
Translate.
yeah. So you're 24. You're sitting in front of the chief executive of your state, right? So how do you do this? How do you sit
Yeah.
there and as 24 and how do you look him in the eye and say you need to listen to me?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's all about, in my mind, it's all about preparation, and
Right.
it's all about just being prepared and anticipating questions. And honestly, I work with some amazing people, obviously a lot of lawyers, but just a lot of people who have been in politics and policy for a long time. And you watch and learn. I'm definitely someone that likes to listen more than speak. And so I spent a lot of time my first probably 6 months, on the sideline, just listening and just sort of watching how he liked to be debriefed. But it really is all about preparation, right? And being, the more prepared you are, obvious point, the more confident you are in what you're saying. And it is all about anticipating what that next question is, because he was the attorney general. So he was he was an attorney by trade, right? And so we all know when you're talking to attorneys, they like to talk, one, and they like to question, and they like to poke holes in your line of reasoning. And so when you're going in and talking to someone about why you should sign this bill or why you should support this, policy, you need to be prepared for really more of the downside than the upside, right? Because that's kind of where he was going to go in the conversation. So I really honed my skills about being prepared. And all it takes is going into one of those conversations and not being prepared to learn that you need to be prepared.
Right. You don't get one shot.
Exactly. So I did that for 3 years, and I really wanted to stay in transportation policy. I loved it. Had like the sort of the geopolitical elements to it. I loved that it was pretty nonpartisan,
Right.
And I was actually in Virginia. The governor can only serve one term, so he's a very powerful governor, but they can only serve one term.
Right.
And at that time, I was then going to go into the Bush administration in a DOT job, and I was really excited about that. And the guy that I was going to potentially work for, his nomination was being held up in the Senate for whatever reason. And so as his nomination was being held up, at the same time I was out of a job. My wife was pregnant with our first child, and I was starting to get nervous, and she wanted to, stay at home. And so I got this, kind of call from a friend who was like, hey, there's this company that's looking for someone to build out kind of, this is right post 9/11.
Right. Build
out a sort of a government marketing arm of this background screening business that's really solid in the transportation space. They were at the time they were called DAC services. And the person was Billy Lee, who was the person that I talked to was going to hire me. And I was like, okay, I'll take this job. And we'll move from Richmond back up to DC. And
it's temporary.
Yeah, exactly. I'll wait on the sidelines until this guy gets, confirmed.
Little did you know.
I'll jump back into this, great public policy career that I had planned. And, obviously, as they say, the rest is history. But as I jumped into, sort of the business side, the commercial side, I just sort of fell in love. I mean, I fell in love with all of the things that I had learned that we were talking about, like in sales and marketing, how I could use those, to my advantage in the commercial side, going out and talking to, at this time, we were talking to federal and state agencies about how we could help them vet everything from hazmat drivers to, all of the things that they were trying to do to create a more secure transportation infrastructure post 9/11. So loved it. Absolutely loved it.
What was their needs at that point? Was it, what were they, criminal record, drug testing, and safety? Like what was the things that drove them to either screen people in or screen people out, whatever your perspective is, but like what drove their decisions?
Yeah, it was definitely, they were looking for obviously criminal history.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really interested in understanding the background of individuals that were, I mean, obviously you had this such scenario where these people hijack planes and crash them into buildings. So
Fair enough. Probably a heightened sense at that point.
Yeah, we got to get a sense of who are these people that are on the road, and especially folks that are traveling with.
Back then, did all contractors also, if you contracted with the state, you also had to go through screening? Because that happened at one point, or at least here in Texas it did.
Yeah, there were some programs that did that where they decided that they wanted to make sure that there was vetting across.
Even a private company.
Access to state facilities and things like that. Yeah, no doubt.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So I got into this gig in kind of a marketing and sales role. And this business was private equity owned, and it was bought pretty soon after that by a larger company that was doing background investigations in the federal government, this company called USIS. And
Hello, Nigel here. I couldn't help noticing that you're still awake. Now, I'm an owl. I'm supposed to be up at night, but you need your sleep. So if it's your allergy symptoms that are keeping you up, here's a word to the wise. Try Zysol. You see, Zysol works fast to relieve sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat. And it keeps going strong for 24 hours, so you can get your sleep and wake up refreshed and ready for a productive day ahead. Be wise all. Take Zysol at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Then I just sort of decided, well, now I need to sort of start to craft a plan. Like, what do I really want to do? And I am a planner. So don't, like everything that I've told you, like going from
there was intention.
Barely getting out of high school.
Yeah, no.
But when I did get barely out of high school and got into college, when I got into college, I realized, okay, now I got to start to think about what I want to do.
Right? Sure. You got to start putting something together.
Put something together.
Well, the moment you said your wife was pregnant, at that point, it probably is like, I need to kind of, I got to sell her a plan.
We may not be talking to you today if your wife weren't pregnant and the Senate wasn't holding up the nomination.
That's right.
We may not even know who you are.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
And roads are not blue or red. That's one of the best things about that particular area of politics is infrastructure. Everybody cares about it.
Everybody does, yeah. Which was so much fun to work in because of it. And you also saw the fruit of your labor, right? And
you can point to it.
You can literally deliver something. You know, it's not an esoteric, which a lot of that stuff can be esoteric and transitory, meaning it doesn't stay. One regime will have it, then the next regime will wipe it out. It just kind of goes back and forth. When you build a bridge over a river, bridge isn't going anywhere. Bridge is going to stay there.
I mean, it could go somewhere, and we hope it does.
Good point, Tank. Good point.
True. Well, two of the biggest projects I worked with, and you guys have probably been in the D.C. area many times, was the new Woodrow Wilson Bridge. So we opened that and worked very closely with Maryland and D.C. on that project. And then, there's this interchange. It's called the Springfield Interchange, where 395, 95, and the Beltway meet, which was a massive project. And then Metro out to Dulles. So those were three projects that we worked really closely on. And again, it's kind of one of those things I wasn't, pivotal to any of them, but I was involved in them. But to your point, it's like you can see these things made a big difference, obviously, in the infrastructure in that area.
I did. I spent 3 summers in D.C. on internships with the Smithsonian's. 2 of them with Smithsonian's in a national park. So I was there. Now, this would be the 90s. This would be late 90s and late 90s. I was there without a car, using the metro to go everywhere.
Great system. Yeah,
I loved it. The when you were doing the lobbying, is that K Street that has all the lobbyists? Like, what's the street that has all the lobbyists?
Yeah, K Street is the street, although our shop was not on K Street.
Well, the rent's a little high on K
Yeah,
Street.
exactly. We were a little smaller, but yeah, everyone goes from like Capitol Hill to K Street.
Oh yeah, there's some bars and restaurants along the way in between those two places that it's all politicians.
Yeah,
so
completely.
Yeah. That's interesting. When you mentioned private investigation, I want to make sure that I understand the background of background screening. In what I've been told, when it was first started, it was PIs. It was private investigators that would do a lot of manual.
Yeah.
They'd go out and follow a person. They'd go out, question the neighbors, like typical PI work. They'd go and do all that stuff to find out what was there. Then they'd build a report. So the whole thing was manual, and it was human centric. There wasn't technology. It was Billy's going to go follow a person that you're thinking about hiring, and if he can dig up anything about you should do this, then he's going to put it in a report. That's it. Now, that's dated, obviously, because it's much different now. But what part of that spectrum did you come in on? Were there still PIs involved when you first started?
Yeah, not really. So when I first started, the industry was still extremely fragmented, but they were, we were doing a lot of work via fax, right? We had very thin. We did have some. Yeah, we had technology platforms that people could order and see results and see status, but they were super basic. But think about gathering records from courthouses, 4,000 courthouses around the country. This was all
that aren't digitalized.
Yeah, fax and mail. So there was huge mail and fax operations to get that information, which obviously has changed significantly.
What was the turnaround on a screen in number of hours or days at when you first started?
It was at least 5 days, I would think. Yeah.
I want people to hear that because they're like, I don't screening to it's not happening fast enough. I'm like, you don't understand where we've come from.
And how many of these people got through that shouldn't have gotten through with that manual effort?
Oh, shortcuts were probably made. Yeah, good point. Huh.
And then on the government side, it still is very much more of an investigation.
Yes.
Because if you're going to get a security clearance at the Department of Defense, we actually had an investigator that had your case, and they would go out and interview you, and they would interview your employer. They would interview your neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
They would interview your references, and they would create a report. So that was a much more in-depth process than, kind of on the commercial side.
Right.
So when I started at USIS, I got quickly into not just sales, but then I was interested in strategy. I started to become really fascinated by business strategy. And at the same time, I decided, I think I'm going to go back to school and get an MBA. Because I didn't have, and I had thought about going back to school to get a law degree. And then people were telling me, do you want to be a lawyer? I was like, no, I don't. And they're like, then don't pursue that. But I was looking for something that would kind of amplify my knowledge.
100%.
Coming out of this, I was in politics and policy, and then I wanted to, sort of get this amplification going into business. And so I went back to school, got an MBA, and got super interested in a couple things. One was strategy.
Did you take 2 years off and went and did a full-time program? Or
I did a part-time program.
Yeah, that's hard.
When I started, I had my second child.
Thanks.
And then when I ended, I had my third.
So people don't know how difficult that is to juggle work, family, and the MBA, because it's not like they lessen the program. That's what most people don't know when they're saying, I'm going to do my MBA part time. I'm like, you understand That's a full-time 2-year program for most students. It's killer. Like it's designed to kill you. The whole bit is a gauntlet. Like they don't make like halfway for the part-time people. They're like, it's the same. It's the same syllabus.
At this time too, I got tapped to go out to, of all places, Tulsa, Oklahoma on a weekly basis to run their marketing team. So we had this commercial screening business that was in transition, and I was tapped to do this for 6 months. And so I was getting on a plane every Monday, flying out there, doing homework at a hotel and doing it on a plane. And as you were saying, like balancing time with your young kids. And it was an interesting sort of 2 years. But in that 2 year, the program that I went to had an international focus. And so we did these kind of capstone projects. One was in Turkey, one was in India, where we did consulting work for companies. We did consulting work for Infosys in India, which at that time was like this small BPO.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to go overseas and, again, kind of rekindled my love for geography and culture and people. And I got so interested in like, wow, like this is a different market and there's different buyers and there's different ways to market to them. And I just loved that challenge. And so at that time I was like, okay, I definitely want to do something overseas at some point. Like I was just in the back of my head, I was like, I got to do that. So I got into a strategy and corporate development role. I went from kind of sales and marketing into strategy and corporate development. And I spent 2 years doing a couple different deals, doing everything from sourcing opportunities to diligence to closing deals. We sold the business to a private equity firm. I was working with bankers and lawyers, and it kind of took me back to my campaign days, right? Because when you're doing a deal, as you guys know, it's the same thing, right? It's this frenetic pace of
100%.
activity from, the time that you sign that, that LOI to the sign that you get it actually closed. The diligence is a really in-depth process, but it's got to be exacting, right?
Oh, yeah. Somebody has to set the clock, because if someone doesn't set the clock, it could take 2 years to get a deal done.
Yes.
So someone, it's different people in different cases, but someone has to say, hey, this thing's got to be wrapped up and done by April 1st, period. And all of a sudden, you got to ferret out all the risk in it. Oh yeah.
I loved it. I loved the pace of that, and then I loved the integration piece too, because I really became passionate about just sort of this idea of change management. And so we did that for 3 years, and then it was critical for me at that time. I was like, you know what, I want to be a CEO. Like that's what I want to do. I want to run a business. And so I had some good mentors at that time who said, well, you need to start to get, P&L roles under your belt. And so I started my first foray into P&L experience, and I ran a business unit in Chicago. We had about 300 employees, about $70 million in revenue. And we moved the family from DC to Chicago and did that for 2 years and loved it. Loved building the team, loved building the strategy, loved interacting with our clients, loved interacting with our employees, and just really fell in love with this. Like the thing that I thought I was going to really love about it, it was just sort of emphasized to me in that, right? Because when you're a P&L owner or a general manager, you get to see it all, right? Yep. You're not, you don't get kind of pigeonholed into one functional area. And I liked that because I lack patience. That's probably my biggest vice. And so at that same time, I was thinking like, okay, how do I get overseas? And I was talking to the CEO at the time of HireRight.
Yep.
And he was like, you know what, we're thinking about buying these businesses overseas, and maybe there's a role here for you. And I pursued that heavily. I said, listen, I want to do this job for you. And so I got the job to be the the global GM. And
were they public? Were they public at the time? Or
no, they had gone from public to private, right. And then they were purchased.
Right.
And when he was telling me, well, the job's going to be based in California. And I said, well, you can't really run a business outside the U.S.
This is L.A.,
from California. And so I said, what I really want to do is I want to go to London, integrate these businesses, and build out the business outside the U.S., geographically outside the U.S. And he was like, great, you should do that.
Do you?
So moved the family. At that time, we had 4 kids. We moved the family from Chicago to central London.
Your wife didn't say just go and do this and come home on the weekend?
Yeah, no.
That was a non-starter. Yeah, that was a non-starter. Yeah. So we lived in central London, in Paddington, on Bayswater Road, in the middle of it all. And we had, it was an interesting time because we had bought 2 businesses and they were both fierce competitors of each other. So the integration challenge was, how do you integrate these businesses that
an American being the arbiter of these 2 things?
Exactly. They hate each other.
They could have done it better themselves, quicker themselves, without the American involved.
Oh, no.
Completely.
Fierce competitors.
So I moved over to London and just fell in love with this idea of how do you build a business outside the U.S. because it was just, everything was new, right? I mean, and you guys know this, we have the same language, but we don't, right? I can't remember my quote.
Very different.
We've butchered their language, actually.
Completely. There's so much different about doing business in the UK and then expanding into Europe and then eventually into Asia. And so we integrated the businesses. I started to build a team there. I was a daily commuter into central London on the tube.
Wow.
We were traveling all over Europe as a family. My kids were going to a little primary school in Marylebone on the high street. And I was just like a sponge, like just absorbing all of these different, opportunities. And like I would kid with my colleagues. I'd be like, yeah, you're going to a client meeting in Cleveland. I'm going to a client meeting in Geneva. So, I don't know.
Sounds like I've gotten better than you.
Yeah, it sounds like
enjoy Cleveland.
Exactly, right. No offense to Cleveland, but
none whatsoever.
And we built out a back office in Poland, and so I spent a lot of time in Katowice, Poland, which is in Krakow, and just loved working with the people in that office. We greenfielded an office in Singapore, so we started it from scratch. We had an office in Hong Kong. I was spending a lot of time, just kind of going all around EMEA and APAC, meeting with clients, meeting with prospects, and just figuring out how are we going to position ourselves, how are we going to win in these markets. And it was just an amazing time. I mean, and I was wearing the GM hat, and we were growing the business, and we were positioning ourselves really well as a global player. So it was fabulous. So tick the box, international experience, tick the box. We moved back to the U.S. We moved to Nashville. And at that time, we were trying to sell the company. That didn't happen.
Right.
And then we went through this really interesting period of like 3 years where we lost a CEO. Our holding company went bankrupt. I spent 6 months on the road convincing clients that it wasn't us going bankrupt. It was just the parent company. And it was just a really interesting time. We were kind of rudderless, I would say. And then I got this opportunity to join a small private equity family office that was trying to build a smaller business in the screening space. And I joined them as CEO. And, last box ticked, right? I finally made it. So it was, that in itself was an interesting journey because I had never really worked for a family office.
Right. Different.
And that's a very different dynamic than working
it is.
In private equity or working obviously in a public company. And I learned a whole lot there. During the 2 years, we did a couple different deals and grew the business from 7 million to 70 million, which was amazing. Dealt with a lot of integration work, change management, scaling the company. but it was really good experience of learning how to be an executive and managing a board, managing the sort of the private equity owner, and kind of really dealing with issues that I had never dealt with before. Even in previous P&L experiences, you didn't have a lot of those same experiences because you kind of had a CEO and you had a board and you were a little bit separated from that. Great experience. I left that in 2019 and I took 6 months off. And at this time, we had moved from Nashville.
Don't tell me you had your 5th kid. Like what?
No.
Plant's closed, right? At this point, we're done.
Plant is closed.
Okay. Because you're in zone coverage 2 and 4.
Exactly.
There's no bueno.
My wife did a good job of convincing me to have 4. So I was like, all right, good, we have 4. We moved from Nashville to San Diego. So I took 6 months off. We were living in Coronado, which is
nice. Yeah.
Amazing place to live. And I took 6 months off and really took a step back. I mean, at that time I guess this was 5 years ago. So I was like in my late 40s. And I kind of just said to myself, like, what do you really want to do with your life? It was kind of like that, sort of midlife inflection point.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you call it a crisis. I didn't go buy a Porsche or anything like that. It was just kind of like, I think that was where I was like, what really does make you happy? And I think it was a great time for me to just of introspection of just thinking like, what are the things that really matter to me after this whole journey of going from politics and policy and corp dev and strategy and sales and marketing and global and CEO and like, what am I really looking for? And I spent a lot of time at Starbucks on Orange Avenue in Coronado,
which is where it is.
And then I spent a lot of time surfing in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
All great places to kind of find yourself, right?
100%.
I spent a lot of time on the sidelines of my kids' football games. I really just lived life. I just took a step back and said, what is this all about? And I literally started to write down the things that made me happy, and the things that kind of brought me joy, whether it's in the workplace, like the kinds of people I like to work with, the environment I like to work in, sort of what does the company look like that I'm interested. I mean, like just sketched out like this. Again, I told you guys I'm like a planner, so I had to sketch this thing out. And I kind of honed in on what I was looking for. And ironically, when I got, I was talking to the guys at Accurate about doing this. We were doing a deal with Career Builder. We were going to buy Career Builder's employment screening. And I came in on that as a consultant. And I said, I got a chance to kind of kick the tires before you buy,
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you jump into a job, you don't get to do that. I mean, you go through an interview process and I spend, 30 minutes talking to you, William, and 30 minutes talking to you, Ryan. Like, but I have no idea how you really are, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I'm on my best behavior.
Exactly. Yes. And so going through the deal and doing the deal and getting to know the management team, I really felt like, these are the kinds of people I want to work with. This is the kind of culture that I'm aligned with. And this is the kind of challenge that I'm interested in, right? Like we got to integrate these two businesses. They're about the same size. And then we got to build this go-to-market team from something that is, fairly opportunistic to something that is repeatable and, measurable. And it's been a great experience. And I still think I want to get back into a CEO seat at some point because I think that is something that is on my radar. But again, I think now I don't look at it as I'm chasing a position, right? I'm chasing an environment. I'm chasing a culture. I'm chasing an opportunity and what that looks like. And I think for me, that was like the biggest kind of aha moment in my career so far is stepping away from chasing positions because I got really interested in that, like, oh, I got to be this and I got to be that. I got to, to then saying like, but what really does, make you happy? And it's been great.
That's a great story. I followed the whole thing. and I wanted to interrupt with a lot of questions, and I just followed along.
No, I did too.
You
I did
took me
too.
on that journey today.
Great
Yeah,
story.
we usually ask
I
a ton of questions.
don't need to. No, I think Ryan asked the question yesterday, though, which I thought was great.
Oh, the little kid.
What would your younger self say to your older self? So your 16 or 18-year-old, Dan, say to your, you know,
Oh no,
your,
younger, like
yeah.
10-year-old
Oh,
self. What would
okay.
like your
10-year-old
10-year-old
Dan.
self tell Dan of today to keep in mind as you're going
Yeah.
through life?
That's a great question. I think, one thing that I think my 10-year-old self would say is, maybe don't constrain your dreams a bit. When I was younger, I was fairly, um, I was kind of an introvert,
Right.
and I wasn't like this super sporty kid. I wasn't the most popular kid. I was kind of hanging with everybody, but I always was like a dreamer. I loved to write, and my 10-year-old self would have said, like, you're going to be a writer. Like, that's what I wanted to be when I was 10 years old. I wanted to be a writer. And I think that, I think that person would say, don't constrain your dreams, I think. And I think because you can get kind of pigeonholed into what you think you want, right? And obviously all of our environments shape that, right? Because they're constantly telling us what we want or what we think we want. And so I think that 10-year-old will be like, yeah, but why don't you go be this, that, or the other? Like, why are you constrained by this? So I think that that's something that I kind of keep in the back of my mind.
I think that those are, we could probably do shows upon shows on this with people. Just you've been through the journey, you've seen success.
No, there's still a lot more of the journey to go. But yeah.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, yeah. His mother's 91. I mean, what are you, 25? Like he's got time.
He's got a while.
He's got plenty of time. But we often forget, regardless of what level of success you have, you forget what you were at 10 years old.
Yeah.
And what your 10-year-old self would say if you asked him at 10 years old, what do you want to do? I want to be a writer.
I want to be an astronaut.
I want to be an astronaut, right? But there's dreams, right? Now the job might be a little far-fetched, but the dream behind that job is real. And
it broke my heart. I did a bit for there's a nonprofit where you teach for a day. So you go into kindergarten, or I think this was like second grade or something.
You teaching my kindergarten.
Oh yeah. So I came in.
No qualifications involved.
Zero. No, I actually taught undergraduates, but all right. God. So I asked him. I said, "Okay, so obviously all y'all are thinking about college. What colleges are you thinking about? Like, what names are kind of being and all of them were thinking about community college. And this was like second grade. I'm like, okay, so first of all, let's take all the community colleges and let's throw them out the window. Okay. And let's start thinking about Harvard, Stanford, University of Texas. Let's start thinking, you shouldn't have the bar lowered in second grade.
Right.
That was my point to him. Like, let's think bigger than that because you're going to be better than that. So you might go to community college. That's fantastic. A lot of people do. Yeah, that's exactly. But let's set the bar. It's second grade now. In 11th grade, okay.
Yeah, it starts to get a little. Yeah, the window gets a little smaller, right?
Yeah, it does, right? But not in second grade. But it literally broke my heart. But
oh my gosh, yeah,
Dan, you've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your journey with us. We just really appreciate you.